I listed this house. I got a sign call off of that from another person who didn't end up wanting to buy that house. We were under contract, and she asked me if I would help her find something else. Absolutely. So I got 4 extra deals off of that one listing. And if you work it right, you're willing to take good care of people. That's the way listings work. You don't get that from buyers. That was a $20 Vistaprint car magnet. That led to the listing, and then the listing led to 4 more deals.
So listings multiply, right? Hey, good afternoon. This is Brian Stevens with Realtors of Faith. I am super excited to welcome my friend David Doty. David is with Call It Closed Realty. And David is a believer, a follower of Christ, who's a real estate agent and got a great family. We were just kind of chatting launching here this podcast. So I'm excited to talk to David. David, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I feel like God wants to say something through you today. I know he does because he's ordained this. So man, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Brian. I've been looking forward to this since you reached out a little while back. I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, man. And David, what you probably don't know, which I didn't even mention pre-launch here, is that when I first brought up Realtors of Faith and kind of a soft launch with this, just putting some material out there, you were one of the first ones to reach out to me, and you just said, "Hey, what is this? What's going on?" And so I appreciate you even prompting and reaching out to that. So it's really cool that we can just have this conversation today. So, hey, let's just dive right into it, man. We're Realtors of Faith. So how long have you been a believer? And anything you want to share with who the Lord has put in our audience here to listen to, you can encourage them. So tell me about your walk with Christ. How long, and maybe a little bit how it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I got saved in October of 2001. And I grew up in the church. My parents had always taken me to church. I was usually there Sunday morning, Sunday night. And high school, I was president of my youth group, and the whole time I didn't really have a personal relationship with Jesus. And that evidenced itself as I gained more and more freedom, moved out of my parents' house, and got, as you can relate, got involved with drugs and alcohol. I became a father at the age of 22, decided to get married. And then a couple years later, I was going through divorce with 2 little kids, and it was just ripping my heart out, And my kids were 3 and 1. They were calling another man dad, and there was nothing I could do about it. And the judge said I could see him every other weekend, And so that was difficult, and it drove me to my knees. In God's kindness, He took me to rock bottom, so I would finally look up and get to know Him for who He truly is. I realized I was a failure at everything I'd ever tried to do, and decided maybe it was time I let Him lead. And a short time later, I was in ministry, which I don't recommend any new believer get into ministry. In some ways we should all be in ministry, but probably not in the traditional church model. And Scripture even warns against that. But I was being obedient to the Lord, and He ordained all of that, and I did a lot of things the hard way, and eventually became kind of experienced church hurt, and that led into probably 10 years of wilderness or so. But since that time, the last 10 years or so, my wife and I have been leading home groups and trying to disciple people who want to be discipled.
Yes, we have a similar path. We shared our background just before. Same here, drugs and alcohol, 13 years, and got radically saved. And God led you, and I think it's awesome. And we both do share that we're in full-time ministry as a church staff, and now we're still doing ministry just in our form that God's got us in with our family, which is the most important ministry, right?
Amen.
And our church and everything else too. So I love how we share even that kind of background, it's kind of funny, David, because you and I have experienced darkness in our background. Like when you come out of the darkness, that kind of life, man, and you come into the light, I know it's so cliche, but literally, we understand what it was like to walk in darkness and now get to walk in light. And it's so much lighter, isn't it? It's just so much more freeing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's as easy as asking the Lord what it is he wants us to do. You know, I mean, that was my experience. I had come to the end of my rope. I wasn't sure. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have kids, I wouldn't have been that miserable, but I also, if I had been that miserable, not being, as a result of not seeing my kids, I would have just ended it. But I wanted to stay around for them, and that's what God used to get me to this point that I was willing to say, okay, what is it you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want me to do, because the things I've been trying to do on my own have failed, all of them, miserably.
Same here. Yep, I'm with you. Thank God he leads us. Yeah.
Amen. Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. So how'd you get into real estate? Like, how long you been in real estate, and maybe why, or what got you into real estate?
When I became a landlord in 2011, I began seeing the power of real estate. I went to work. Actually, I was working then for a financial services company. I was an operations manager for, at the time, a Fortune 80 large company in Charlotte. And, so we're trading stocks and doing all of these things. It's all about higher education and retirement plans and all of this stuff. And I started renting out a house and seeing the cash flow, and I thought, man, this is a whole lot better than owning a piece of paper that could disappear tomorrow. And so, long story short, I left that career that I had. I mean, I had gone from driving a garbage truck, making what I thought was good money for blue collar back then, around $50,000 a year, to making double or triple that as an operations manager for this financial services company. But I walked away from it when I started to understand the power of real estate, and I started investing in real estate in 2012, 13. You could, buy a foreclosure for $50,000 or $60,000 and paint it and sell it and make $10,000, $20,000. I thought,
right.
I thought I was really smart. I had figured that out. But when the market started coming back, 2013, 14, all of a sudden there weren't foreclosures anymore. All of a sudden the foreclosures are selling for retail. And I had learned about real estate, but I didn't really have another way to invest at that point. I didn't have a way to grow my portfolio. And so I just began serving other people. And that's what led to me getting licensed.
Do you still do any investment flips? I know it's hard to find good flips or good, to buy them these days, and it's hard to find it. I mean, we don't have anything around here unless you're, an inside track, or you're buying at the courthouse steps, as they say. That's not my world, but are you seeing any of that where you are, or do you do it, or are you seeing any of that kind of stuff?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it's been probably 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years since I flipped a house. And that's because I went on a listing appointment, and the house was in pretty bad shape, and the people were really desperate to sell very quickly. And so I said, we could list it at, as is, for probably 400, but we have to have showings. And they're like, we can't have showings. I'm like, well, I could probably find an investor to pay you, 50,000 less or something like that would pay you cash. And they said, man, they would jump on that. That would really help them out a lot. They were actually facing foreclosure. They had about 30 days. When they called me for the listing appointment, it was a neighbor, and they had 30 days to basically pay or get out. I'm like, okay. And they wanted the most they could. And I went to a couple buddies that I knew would have some money, and they decided to fund this deal. And so the three of us just kind of split it 3 ways, and it was a real quick flip. But then again, even the market back then, the margins were crazy. Everything was selling above list price still. It was before the market had really turned. And, so I don't really look forward to those days again.
Right.
But if they come back around, I'll probably get back into the game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's timing is everything, right? Because you make your money when you do the buy. Right?
Absolutely.
When you buy it. That's when you make your money.
Yeah. And I never felt good about taking advantage of people. I mean, even when I was flipping houses, when I first got into it, I didn't mind throwing lowball offers to a bank.
Sure.
I really struggle to do that to somebody that's down on their luck,
Right. Yeah, that's true. Unless they're like, please, anything, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
yeah. And I think that segues into our next question, because as a follower of Christ, you want to represent Jesus in all of your dealings the best you can. We all mess up, all of us do.
Mm-hmm.
But how does being a Christian affect a situation like that, or your business decisions as you've walked with the Lord now for a long time, and you're doing the real estate business? How does that affect your decision making process?
Well, I'm pretty extreme, and I understand that not every believer is going to view things the same way that I do, but I take it very seriously. Certainly I'm not perfect. I have made a lot of mistakes. I'm trying to get better every day. But for me, it's much more important to focus on the eternal fruit that we're bearing rather than making a dollar. So if it means that in order to keep my word, I'm going to lose money, I'm probably going to lose money. And so from the world's perspective, I'm not the best investor. I'm not the best realtor out there. Honestly, if I'm looking at your marketing stuff that you put on Facebook, Brian, and TikTok and your videos and stuff, and if I was going head to head against you at a listing appointment and somebody asked me why they should hire me, I'd be like, man, I wish you hadn't asked me that. You should probably hire Brian. He's going to do a better job. So I'm honest to a fault,
Yeah. Good for you. That's awesome, man.
Well, it's not always the best for, feeding the kids and paying the bills and stuff, but it's just, I've got to be able to sleep at night,
Yes. At the end of the day, you've got peace in your life, in your heart. That's what it's all. And you're looking out for the client's best interest, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not easy, man, because it does cost us commissions, cost us deals, cost us, getting a listing or not, or helping a buyer out or not. And so, when we do have challenges, right? I mean, that's when, for example, yesterday I had a nice offer that I had with these buyers, and I tried to help out, was going to contribute part of my commission. The other realtor was, just to keep it alive. And we took too long to negotiate that, I think, and the longer you stretched out in that negotiations, even if it's a day and a half, buyers just get tired. They get emotionally exhausted, and they're like, bye. And I brought it back to my buyers, and they're like, we don't feel like, and I'm like, all right, Lord. I can tell they don't want the house. I gave it my, and I'm like, oh, I wanted this for this, but the Lord's like, Brian, trust me, let it go. It's not yours anyways, right? And I did, and I was professional with them, but deep down in my heart, I was like, but,
yep.
I knew, to your point, they didn't want the house. Bottom line is they would have taken it if they would have wanted this, and they just didn't feel peace about it. I'm like, hey, totally fine, you guys. We'll go find you another house.
Yeah, and the relationship is worth so much more than a one check.
Yes.
I mean, they're gonna remember that. They're gonna call you back in 5-10 years when they're ready to sell, or maybe longer. They're gonna come back to you because you're doing what's best for them.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. It's all about building relationships, right? As you know. Yeah. So, in your experience, how does operating like that, from a point of just always being honest, integrity, stewardship, how does that give you an advantage as you've been a real estate agent and investor? What kind of advantages that maybe give you?
Well, referrals is one. When you do the right thing for somebody and they're really singing your praises, they're not only going to use you for life, they're going to refer their friends and family to you, and when you get a referral that's so passionate that you just go in and they're willing to take your advice, and they know that you're acting in their best interest because of the way that you've been built up by their friend or family member who's a past client of yours.
Yes.
It really sets you up for a lot of success. And so you might lose a little bit on the front, but you're going to gain a whole lot more over the long haul.
Yeah. Do you find do you get a good amount of referral business as you're plugging along here? Are you seeing a decent amount of that?
Absolutely. So I somewhat recently relocated to Florida, and this market's a little bit different than what it was.
Yeah. Yes.
But in my last neighborhood where I had been an agent for 7-8 years before moving, I was the dominant agent. It was funny, when I got licensed, there were 3 or 4 other agents who lived in the neighborhood, and every one of them got out of the business or moved away. And I'm not saying that's my fault, or that it was a reaction to me, but I dominated that neighborhood. I was listing, I was working, a part-time stay-at-home dad and all of those other things, but I was still selling 2 to 4 homes a month, working 25 hours a week. And I could do that because I was listing properties primarily within a 3-mile radius of my house. And 80%, 85% of my business was always listings. And so I just positioned myself in that way. I could work 20, 25 hours a week and sell 2 or 3 easy, sometimes 4, depending on the market, at one point 6 or 7 homes a month. And I don't think I ever had any really unhappy customers. I was able to take really good care of people and earn a nice living doing that, really working part-time.
Okay. So you just said something that's gold to my ears: listings. So a lot of agents listening to this, believers or not believers, let's just talk about listings. List to last. You've heard about this. I love listings.
Yep.
In fact,
Me too.
I've wanted to, I can be a little corny too, just whatever. And so I wanted to do a shirt that says, I heart listings, and literally print them out, because, I would never do that. Not that I think it would sell, but I love listings. As agents are listening to us, tell us what you think about being a listing. What would you suggest to agents who are not sure about listings? What's your experience with that?
There's never a time when a buyer has to buy. There are a lot of buyers that want to buy, that really want to buy, and they're very motivated, but they could decide to rent. Something could happen. There are always going to be people, fortunately or unfortunately, who have to sell. One of my very first houses that I bought as an investor, I went on this appointment. It was a referral from a friend, and I walked in, and she's showing me around the house, and I said, so this lady she was in her 40s, single lady. I asked her why she was selling. She said that she was moving to New York to join a convent. She was becoming a nun. She has to sell. She's taking a vow of poverty. She's got a year to get everything out of her name. Wow. There's nobody that has to buy. So when you have motivated sellers, they're motivated. Right. It's just a matter of doing your due diligence.
Yeah. I've never heard of a nun story like that. That's very interesting. So
that's one of my favorite stories. I still remember her name, and we became Facebook friends, and I still check in on her every once in a while.
That's so nice.
Another one of my first listings, one of my very first listings, I'd been licensed for maybe 7 or 8 months, 9 months tops. And it was a guy at church. He saw at the time I was with Remax, he saw my magnets on the side of my car, trying to get established.
Right.
And he asked me, just because we went to church together, he didn't even ask me any qualifying questions. He said, hey, I want to sell my house. And it was a hot listing. It was in downtown, one of the best suburbs outside of Charlotte.
Okay.
And I listed this house. I got a sign call off of that from another person who didn't end up wanting to buy that house. We were under contract, and she asked me if I would help her find something else. Absolutely. Ended up selling her a house that was half a mile from mine, and then turned around and listed her house, and then listed her next door neighbor's house and helped them buy something. So I got 4 extra deals off of that one listing. And if you work it right, you're willing to take good care of people. That's the way listings work. You don't get that from buyers.
Right. So you got 5X off your sign, because that was the sign call, right?
That was a $20 Vistaprint car magnet.
The car
that
magnet
led to the listing. And then the listing led to 4 more deals.
So listings multiply, right? And
Yeah.
Talk about what it does to your time. When you talk about multiplying your time, right?
Absolutely. So I was farming. So once I got established and had was selling, a good amount around my area where I lived, I began farming those areas. So if I had ever sold a house in that community, I was farming that community. It was all automated. If anybody's interested in that, I'm happy to share the company that I used for that. They did really good marketing. And then so I would go on a listing appointment. People had already checked out my Zillow profile. They're already looking at your Google reviews. They already know that they can trust you. They've already seen your for sale sign around the neighborhood, and now they're getting your marketing material to their house. You go to a listing appointment, and literally 70% of listing appointments, I'm not even competing for the listing. Like, they just want to make sure that I'm actually as real as it appears. I've literally gone on listing appointments where people would say, okay, and obviously there's no set commission amount, especially now.
Yes.
we all know that, but this was many, many years ago. But I went on listing appointments and where people would literally say, okay, in addition to I walk in the house and they say, in addition to 6% commission, what else is there? And I'm like, that's it, here, where do we sign, But it was doing that, Brian, that allowed me to at one point I was listing consistently 4 homes a month I was working 20, 25 hours a week because I was focused on my geographic area. Yes. I was specialized. I knew the price per square foot of every floor plan that there was in every community around me. I didn't have to do any research. I already knew it, and so when my phone rang or when I was checking the mail and a neighbor drives by and rolls down their window and says, hey, what do you think we could get for our house? I already knew. I didn't have to go and look it up. And it bred a lot of credibility. There was 1 month, and this was June of 2021, and so the market was crazy. I mean, after COVID, everything was nuts, right?
Yes, right.
But I sold 7 houses that month, and I was traveling. Literally, my family did a 10-day vacation out west. We spent, I think I had a real estate convention in Las Vegas that was 2 or 3 days. And I took my sons for a couple of days camping up in the North Carolina mountains. We had just adopted our middle son from Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And, so I was gone for 20 days out of that month, and I closed 7 houses. You can't do that with buyers. You just cannot do that with buyers.
Leveraging your time. I mean, and it's spending time with family, which is why do we do all this, right? Why do we work so hard? Not only are we serving the Lord, we're serving other people, but we're serving our family, which is huge. So, that's really, really cool. So you just mentioned farming, which is amazing. And I will tell you, that's not one of my strengths, but I hear about testimonies like farming like that, geographic farming, or you are and were the neighborhood expert in that area. People, you knew the price per square foot. You probably knew not that you name drop, but you go, oh yeah, the Jones house down the street, we just closed on that. We got the Smith's house under contract. So, and they're like, oh, he knows their names, their addresses. You're the neighborhood expert. So really, why would they call anybody else, right? Because you're the neighborhood expert. Says a lot.
Yeah. And there's always going to be 1 or 2, a small percentage of people who are anti-establishment and will work with anybody but the neighborhood expert, and that's fine. You're not going to get every single one, but if you're getting 30% of the listings, I mean, I was getting 50, 60% of the listings in my own community, most of the, year after year. So it's like, you can't fight that. I mean, everybody knows 5 or 10 realtors. Most of us have a sister, brother, uncle, somebody that's a real estate agent. Yeah. So I mean, if you can get 30% of the community, you are the dominant agent in that community. And if you're getting anything above that, you're killing it.
That's wonderful. Yeah. We built a home a couple years ago, and so I started and I hardly ever do this, but sign up for this service that does mailers that mail something every couple of months, market statistics and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to get this neighborhood because it's a new neighborhood, and I want to make sure. Of course, there's a realtor in here also who lives in this neighborhood. I'm like, I'm going to uncheck him so he doesn't get battered. And it's very passive and soft, but I've been getting a lot of the listings in here for the last several years. So, and I hate it when somebody else gets their sign up, but it's happened a few times, of course, but you're not going to be able to get them all. But if you can, if you're known as the neighborhood expert, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's amazing, So,
it is.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What 2025 has been a tough year for some people. I mean, it's been a great year for some people. What would you say to any real estate agent maybe who's had a year of struggling this year? Maybe they're not quite sure what direction to go in, maybe just to encourage them. The market is the market, but there's some people who are just down 30% in production. What would you say to them and just try to encourage them today?
This is going to sound harsh. Not everybody, not everybody is meant to thrive in this business, and there's a season. Maybe you did really well for a period of time and now it's time to focus on other things. Maybe. But that said, a lot of people have gotten out of the business. I see fewer people signing up to get into the business. And at some point, the floodgates are going to be open wide again. And we're going to, I believe we are going to see another market similar to what we experienced in 21 or 22, because we have so much pent up demand.
Yes.
We've seen so few homes selling. I mean, it's like I haven't looked at the stats lately, but I think last year was the slowest year for sales in 30 years or something like that.
That's what I've heard.
That means there's a lot of pent up demand.
Yes, right.
And so there are a lot of buyers. I mean, we probably all have family members or friends or friends' children who are still living with their parents right now that are 30 years old that are like, they're ready to buy a house.
Like years ago. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah. But, and a lot of them are qualified to buy.
Yeah.
But they're just, prices and interest rates together make it unaffordable.
Yes.
At some point, the rates are going to come down, or the prices are going to come down, or a combination thereof. And then it's going to be fire all over again. And so, for those agents who maybe you're thinking, do I just hang on for a few more months? I would say hang on for a few more months. I mean, it's going to come back.
That's good. Yes. Have the hope. It is going to, I mean, this market, they say, is going to be 10 to 15% better, hopefully, next year in 2026, right?
I believe it. When
rates come down, to your point of pent up buyer demand, that's awesome. That's encouraging. Just hang in there. Order takers are not going to make it in the business.
That's true.
Year or two. I mean, it's not come list to me unless you're, getting referrals and super established, and you can get those. But those days are not here right now, right? So
not now.
It's getting back to make your calls, right? And contacts and relationships, like you mentioned, and being able to overcome objections. I've had to work on that this year even better, not to be some cheesy salesman, but able to think through, what's my script for a buyer's broker agreement now? How do you explain that in 1 minute without losing them? Mm-hmm. So it's practicing some scripts, but it's just having some knowledge, right? Some market knowledge and understanding how to present things, and and just and that takes reps, right?
It takes reps. People hate a lot of, well, I think more than half of agents hate the idea of using a script. Think of it as a conversation guide. It is a conversation guide, and once you really know how to have that conversation effectively, you're not using a script anymore. It's just natural conversation. It's flowing. You're leading somebody from point A to point B. You're a professional. That's what our job is. Right. We're to help people. So one of my very first listing appointments, and I think it might have been an office lead or something. This was back in, 2015 probably. And these people had bought prior to 2008. This was a young married couple. They'd been in their house and they had an interest-only loan that they had been making the minimum payments on for 6 years or however long. Their payment was going up because it was also an adjustable rate mortgage. And now they have this little tiny house that they can no longer afford to stay in. They've been making payments on it all of this time, and their only way to get out of it is either to write a check at closing or to just give it back to the bank and ruin their credit. And so they're like, we could write a check, we know the house is probably worth this. I didn't understand how to have these conversations. I was very honest with them. I knew the market. I could read the data, and I was able to tell them exactly what that house would sell for in that market. But I wasn't able to convince them to let me help them. And they went with another agent who lied to them and said, oh, well, you can sell it for $10,000 more or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they listed that house. They moved out. They went in, they had planned on renting an apartment, letting that house sell, and then just kind of getting back on their feet before they buy again. But I wasn't able to close them. And I don't like that terminology, but I wasn't able to earn their trust is what I should say.
Yeah.
They list with this other agent, house is on the market for 6 months. They have to do price reductions. In the meantime, they're paying rent and they're still paying their mortgage.
Yeah.
They ended up selling it exactly what I had told them they could sell it for 6 months before. Yeah. But because it was overpriced, it cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. I did them an incredible disservice by not being able to effectively lead them from point A to point B.
Interesting.
So we have to be willing to look at both sides of it.
That's good. Well, you said I got to sharpen my skills. You were self-reflective, which I think that's amazing. That's a good agent.
Yeah. And not for my own benefit, although it does benefit me, but it's to help people, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm competitive by nature. That's not one of my strengths, but I'm competitive. You are too, I'm sure, right? Because leaders are usually competitive. And when I want to win every listing, and if they don't hire me, I think they hired the wrong agent. I say that sarcastically, but there's a percent of me that really believes that.
Yeah.
But then I have to also be self-reflective, go, the other agent got it. Okay, maybe, Lord, whatever, it happened. What can I learn from that? What could I have done different? Oh, I did not bring this piece of marketing material, or I did not listen to them, what they needed from me, right? And what their real objection or reason was. Now, maybe you can present all that and still not get the listing, and that's okay. But how can we get better at our craft, right? We're always wanting to get better.
Amen.
Easy, but we're always learning. So, well, awesome, man. Hey, anything else that you'd want to maybe add? So we've talked about experienced agents, maybe newer agents that are newer in the market. I feel like we get an audience with newer agents. Okay, so maybe not struggling agents like you just addressed, but you've been in this business a while. So somebody that's a year or two in the business, like just a word of wisdom, or say you should do this, or what you've learned in your experience in the business to make sure you're locking in on 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say stay in your own lane. What is it that you're naturally good at in regard to marketing? Some of us are going to be really good on social media. Some aren't. Some will be really good at designing flyers and those kinds of things. Then that's great. Some of you are really naturally hospitable people. Play to your strengths, So I used to tell my team, I had at one point had a team with 3 other agents, and they were all new. I mean, we were all new. I started a team in my second year as a licensee,
awesome.
which I also don't recommend. Don't do it. Nobody, don't do it. Call me first.
You went after it. I love it. Great.
Just nobody do that. Don't do that. But I used to tell them we're in the friend making business. Go out and make friends, host parties, do something to create relationships. But whatever it is that you're good at, take your own likes. I mean, if you're into riding horses, then start a club that goes out and, every quarter you go out and take your horses out and go on a trip together, or something. If your sphere is your kid's soccer team, host parties for the soccer, and then just be friends with people. That's all you have to do. And if you want to be really successful, you have to do a lot more than that. But that's something that's easy. If you like it, you'll keep doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Stay in your lane. Man, that's a great word. Stay in your lane. Don't try to be somebody you're not, right? That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
I would fail miserably if I tried to be Brian Stevens. I guarantee it.
And you know what? If I try to be David Doty, trying to teach kids to drive like the last one, like we just talked about, I would not be as calm in this chat right here. So yeah. And you were still smiling and doing great. So
deep breath.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, well, David, thank you so much for connecting. I'm going to drop some of your information below in the show notes. So if you want to connect with David, talk about any real estate. What market are you in, David? Market you service?
Yeah, I live down on the Gulf in Southwest Florida, but my team still is operating up in the Charlotte metro area. So I've got a few dozen agents spread throughout North and South Carolina that can take care of anybody. And I'm a managing broker, so I'm more focused on the management side than I am selling.
Yes, yeah, but you can hook them up with a good agent, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Hornets fan, by the way? Charlotte Hornets? Or?
I never got into basketball,
Okay. All right, so basketball's not on the table. Okay, yeah.
Sorry. I appreciate it. I think those guys are amazingly talented. It's just, I'm just not big into sports myself.
Yeah. I could go off on sports, but we won't even go there. So anyways, contact David. All his information is below. Dave, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate your light and your wisdom with everything you shared today.
Thanks, Brian. God bless you.
God bless you, man.